bricks on the screen, healthcare in between. Physics, art, and math got us down this path. Historical tales come alive, where science and stories dive. Blended facts with heart, knowledge from the start. Need rich blues we sing, to the future memory. Health and science in the mix, Midridge got the fix. Complex subjects make
right
clear
now
every episode
in ways that we actually acquire
leads the way,
and ways that make me more efficient.
in the world of digital streams, turning knowledge into dreams. Through the tales of old, new stories unfold.
Thank you so much for joining with me. It is a truly an honor and a privilege.
MedBix Webcast is a new kind of healthcare media channel to break the silo mentality and foster interdisciplinary thinking. Our mission is to fill that gap and to create a curiosity through different lenses, tapping the passion that guided the historical figures in medicine and bringing present-day groundbreaking research to the front lines. We interview physicians and leaders in the industry about present-day healthcare challenges on our live programming. Hey, welcome to the MedBix Webcast. This is Ramana Annamara. We have a special guest. He is a really very interesting background he has. He is an ENT surgeon, Otolaryngology. I'm not a doctor. Remember, he's an ENT surgeon basically. He's a Fulbright scholar. He studied in England. I love Fulbright scholars, smart cookies, As you know, he's a Fulbright scholar. And, he became, he was practicing, he's a professor he's joining from Denver, Colorado. He is the University of Denver. He was a professor, emeritus professor. At the engineering also. I don't know what he did. One thing he wrote in his bio, he said that I started a lot of medical device companies, but they all failed. People don't say that. That is a good thing to do in Silicon Valley. They love that because the failure is a strength here. You learn a lot and you understand things that can go wrong. And that experience is extremely valuable. Why we went wrong? We'll ask him about that. He's a Fulbright scholar. He's an ENT surgeon. And then one thing caught up with my mind. One thing he said in one of his columns is that sick care cannot be fixed within the system. The doctors cannot think about sitting in the system and try to fix it. This is a physics problem, actually. They say you are inside the problem and you cannot fix it. You have to actually, from outside, you have to look at it from an outside observer. That is not there. Only way you can do that. So he started the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs, a network. He encourages doctors to learn about business and the aspects of entrepreneurship and several things. So let me welcome Dr. Arlen Meyers, joining from Denver, Colorado. Dr. Meyers, welcome, sir. Welcome to the MedBix Webcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me back.
Thank you so much. Tell us a little bit about your background. If I missed anything, what I said.
No, I appreciate the kind highlights. Basically the short version is I went through a fairly traditional medical background. I grew up in inner city Philadelphia, went to college, went to med school, did a residency in otolaryngology, head and neck surgery back east. And then I got recruited to the University of Colorado out of my training to be an academic surgeon. So I spent the next 40 years kicking around academic medicine at the University of Colorado, went through the usual food train. And during that time, myself and some others on our team invented a gadget that optically detects cancer in the mouth. And I won't go into the gory details of all of that, but to your point, it failed. But I learned a lot in that experience. The main thing I learned was that every white coat thinks they have a good idea, including me. Most of them don't. It's an idea. It's not something that really has commercial potential. Now, I'm not naysaying basic science, but if you're interested in getting an idea to a patient at that level, I mean, you need a certain amount of education, training, and a lot of other stuff to understand the business of science and medicine and how to get a drug, a device, a software product, whatever, to market. So I really didn't understand all that. And when I looked around to try to find somebody to help me, the short story is technology transfer at academic medical centers has been around for a very long time, and it has its pros and its cons. I was left unsatisfied with how they could help me or if they could help me. And when I looked around, I really didn't see any education from the medical school side or the academic medical side on how to get an idea to a patient. So the long story short, to fill that gap, myself and several other people created the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs to fill that gap. So right now, I'm no longer practicing medicine. I retired as an emeritus in 2015. And now I'm pretty much totally dedicated to the business of medicine, innovation, entrepreneurship, and building this international ecosystem that we call the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs.
I used to work with Dr. Cardiologist Jeff Weisman from Philadelphia. He was coming to the South and helping me with the nuclear cardiology. As a mobile nuclear cardiology, I used to do that. It's very interesting. The Philadelphia, that they know all the inner city problems and everything, I think. Let me ask you, you said that the sentence you said, I failed, it's a lot of medical device companies. What it means for you, tell us a little bit about that. You boldly said that. I really respect for that. So tell us a little bit about it.
Well, first of all, I want to back up a little bit, because the traditional concept or notion of entrepreneurship is you start a company and hopefully you grow it and scale it, and maybe you exit and make some money or do some good. But my view of entrepreneurship really goes much beyond that. It really has to do with the pursuit of opportunity under volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous conditions. And the goal is to create user-defined value through the deployment of innovation using a viable business model. And in the case of medicine and sick care, we can talk about sick care later, the idea is to achieve the sextuple aims. Now, and they are improve quality, reduce cost, improve the patient experience, improve the doctor or provider experience, reduce or eliminate waste, and oh, by the way, if you're a company, create shareholder value. Now, most of what we're seeing now, I would challenge, does not satisfy that definition. But given that definition, so what that means is you can be a technopreneur in the traditional sense of creating a gadget or a device or a drug or a something and building a company. But that's one of many, many different ways to satisfy what I'm calling sick care entrepreneurship or medical practice. For example, medical practice entrepreneurship, what we used to call private practice. Intrapreneurship, you're an employed physician trying to add value to your employer. Social entrepreneurship, public health entrepreneurship, educational technology entrepreneurship, et cetera, et cetera. And I've had the good fortune and luck to basically wear all of those hats. I used to be in private practice. I've done a ton of stuff in education, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all of this really just has to do with creating an entrepreneurial mindset, identifying a market gap, filling it, and providing value to the end user.
Very good. One of the things that I get a lot of people in Silicon Valley come to me and say, we want to start a company. I have a great device, or I gave a great service for doctors. They come to me. One of the things I repeatedly see that this one, Dr. Meyers, is that they don't know who pays for it. Patient pays for it. Insurance pays for it. Doctor pays for it. They don't have the answer, but they think they can revolutionize the healthcare system.
Right.
That is where they fail right at the beginning itself. What do you suggest? That kind of a ignorance, is really problematic, for a lot of
right.
people. Yeah.
Right. Well, I call that, when you come up with an idea, I call that, so what who cares, who pays how much.
Yeah.
And the problem is, as you alluded to, that when you look at the lifestyle or the roadmap of a commercialization product, it typically involves 3 or 4 fundamental steps. One is you obviously have to come up with a problem, a customer problem that's big enough to solve. But then once you have done that, you have to have a viable business model. So you have to do a whole bunch of work to figure that out. You have to cover the intellectual property issues, so create guardrails and barriers to entry. You have to satisfy regulatory requirements and have a regulatory pathway. And you have to have a reimbursement plan. Now, the problem is folks think, well, I'll worry about who's going to pay this later. I just need to get FDA clearance. Well, by that time, that's not going to work, because for all the reasons you know, and you're not going to get the money, you haven't de-risked the problem, you underestimated who's going to pay for it, you thought the patients were going to pay for it, and they're not going to pay for it. And even if somebody did pay for it, they probably wouldn't pay you as much as you would have liked them to pay for it. So this notion of sequentially jumping through the pathway and the nodes really doesn't work. It has to be done concomitantly. So you have to sort of move the intellectual property plan, the regulatory affairs plan, the reimbursement plan, and the business model plan all at the same time. Because fundamentally, when you go to ask for money, every one of those elements have to be de-risked in order for someone to give you money.
Dr. Myers, on the top of that, one of the biggest things I see in Silicon Valley is that the marketing, they don't leave any budget for marketing. So they think that their device or their service will automatically sell to just general millions of people, and billion people they estimate. All the wrong estimations, and it's part of the business plan, of course. So tell us the marketing, where they lack that understanding of the marketing. Even the doctors, they know that is a missing in that aspect.
Well, fundamentally, I didn't get into medical school because I was a creative genius. I didn't get into medical school because I was a digital marketer that had a gazillion followers. Of course, there was no social media when I went to school, but these days, that's not why you get into medical school. It's not why you get into a PhD program.
Yeah.
You get into a medical school because you know how to take tests, you know how to study and get grades, you know what to say at the interviews. And basically, you don't get into medical school because fundamentally, you don't know how to sell. So I say to people, and this all revolves around why we don't teach the business of medicine, innovation and entrepreneurship in medical schools or in pre-med classes or in residency or in practice. That's a whole nother conversation we can talk about. But the point is that fundamentally, doctors don't know about marketing and sales. Now, it's not their fault. That's not what they trained to, that's not what they signed up for when we went to get into medical school. But if you're going to go down this road, I talk to a lot of medical students and residents about this topic. And I asked them, 2 questions. How many of you want to go into private practice and not work for someone? The last time I asked that question, no hands went up. 0. All the students want to go to work for the man. They want to work for Optum. They want to work for someone as an employed physician. And I also asked them, how many of you have actually made money selling something anytime during your life? Now we're talking about 18 to 20-year-olds. None of them have ever had a job. So when you ask them to do this, it comes as a complete. Now, the good news is you can learn this stuff and you can practice it, but it's an unrealistic expectation to expect physicians or pre-meds or medical students or residents to know how to sell something. So when they become the CEO or the founder of a company, particularly a startup, which you and I both know means you do everything. You are the salesperson. You are the fundraiser. Well, that's one of the reasons why they fail. They're simply not trained to sell.
Yeah.
And I
That's
tell people, and when med students or the parents of pre-meds ask me, what should I tell my kid? He wants to be a doctor, whatever. What's the single piece of advice you would give? One is don't take my advice, because what I say is just my story, not yours. But the second part is, if I could give you one piece of advice as a kid, learn how to sell.
yeah.
Get a
One of
job,
the,
mow a lawn, sell Kool-Aid. I don't care what you
yes,
do. Figure it out.
absolutely.
And these days, kids don't have summer jobs. They don't do that. So I think it's a
My
big gap.
my son is a neuroscientist and is a clinical researcher, and then he's trying to sell a music, rap music. I tell you, I think you should understand that selling that music, it really gives you perspective. You do something, sell something. That is a very
Right.
important, how to interact with the people. Like even the bartenders can sell. Because they interact with the public. This is, you can learn from them. This is what they do. How do they be pleasing to the
Right.
customers? That's one of the areas that doctors think, oh, they all come to me and they do, which
Right.
I tell them what to do. This is
Well,
the kind of
the other point is that you are selling as a doctor. You're not selling something that a patient shouldn't do. But if you
yeah,
come to me with XYZ complaint and I say do this, I'm trying to sell what
yeah,
is in your best interest to do that I'm recommending. And if the patient doesn't follow through, that's not helpful. So
yeah.
it's a transferable skill. It's just not something that people recognize when they switch from a clinical mindset to an entrepreneurial mindset.
One of the things in the selling part of it, in the right now in Silicon Valley, is a big thing. Everybody talks about selling, talking a story, telling a story. You really, that's what I started my podcast, telling stories of the past scientists, doctors,
Right.
who created all these things. Such an interesting journey that they go through, that you may not, that you look irrelevant, but it's actually absolutely relevant to sell or to market yourself. The stories are a very powerful way of telling
Right.
things to the selling, is a part of a selling. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, when it comes to pitching, for example, or getting money from, everybody says the same thing. The idea is you tell a story. It's not that you talk about the device. It's not that you give them all the fancy bells and whistles. It's you tell the story. And again, there's a whole literature on how do you tell a story. I mean, basically, there's a book actually called The Seven Stories, and every single movie, novel, whatever, a piece of entertainment follows the same pattern of a story. It typically has to do with the hero. It has to do with the victim. It has to do with the enemy. It has to do with the journey and overcoming the
The
barriers. And yeah,
lowest
the whole thing. Right. So in this particular case, if you're trying to help a patient through the deployment of a gadget or whatever, the hero of the story could be the patient who is suffering,
Oh,
and then you come to the rescue and the patient lives happily ever after. So
that's a
that's
brilliant.
that's
That's
the
a brilliant,
story.
Dr. Myers. I never
Yeah.
thought that way. Patient is the hero. That's a
Right.
beautifully said. Yeah,
Right. So you
I
have to,
hear that.
but if you get up and you say, my gadget does this, this, and that, and you get into all
Yeah,
the details and the technology, you're dead
yeah,
in the water. So that's another, so that is part of selling,
yeah.
learning how to sell the story.
Yeah, and also you mentioned and make a patient as a hero in that
Right.
story. It's very
Right.
interesting.
And the same applies, I would just say that the same applies, I mentioned nonprofit or social entrepreneurship. So when we created, and I won't go into the whole details, but when we created the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs, it's a pretty interesting story. And people want to hear the creation story because the gang that created this was struggling with this problem, and they had to deal with those bureaucracy and the naysayers, and you can't do this, and you overcome the hurdles. And sure enough, here we are 14 years later with a pretty large international organization. So
Yeah,
learn to tell the story.
yeah. I'll just come back to your Society of Physician Entrepreneurs in a minute. Let me ask you about one thing that I caught up my eye. Said that, you cannot fix the system within the sick care system. fixing within that system. You said that the doctors need to expose to outside world and learn a different. You already mentioned those things, but I want to know a little bit, expand on that idea of interdisciplinary thinking. Mathematics. Oh, that's something I don't want to learn. You don't need to learn actual math calculus, but you need to understand the concept of that, where the mathematics apply, where the physics applies. Just getting that idea itself opened up complete horizons of the entrepreneurship. Just I'll let you comment on that.
All right. So a couple of points. So first of all, we've been alluding to this term sick care, and some of the listeners may be confused by that. The reason that I call it sick care is, we're presently in the United States spending roughly $5.7 trillion on a sick care spend. It's estimated to go up next year to $6 trillion. We spend more money than any country in the world, and we don't get very good outcomes. So of that money, 90-something% of it is spent taking care of sick people. It's not spent on public health infrastructure, particularly during this time of history. It's not spent on disease prevention or chronic management, et cetera, or public health infrastructure. It's spent on taking care of sick people. So we have a sick care that masquerades as a healthcare system. People call it, but it's not a healthcare system. It's a sick care system. Okay. So the problem is that sick care anywhere in the world is what's referred to as a wicked problem. It is not, it's multifactorial, and it fundamentally means that it is a multi-systems engineering problem. In other words, there's no silver bullet. So we're talking about social determinants. We're talking about income inequality. We're talking about discrimination. We're talking about homelessness. We're talking about the process of how things get done in the United States, the delivery system, the cost. That all these factors are independent systems that contribute to where we are in the sick care system. So in order to solve that problem, first of all, the definition of a wicked problem, one of the aspects of it is it's probably insolvable. That's why it's wicked. But so what you do is try to optimize the best you can with the assets and the resources that you have. But you have to understand it's like a balloon. So if you press in one place, it's going to pop out. The problem is going to pop out somewhere else. So you just have to sort of optimize. It fundamentally comes down to quality, cost, and access. So you have to optimize which trade-off you want to make for a given system anywhere in the world. Everybody's got a different system. Everybody's got different values. Everybody's got different history. So what happens in Sri Lanka isn't going to happen in Kansas. It's a different deal. So that's what we're dealing with. Is a six now. So in order to do that, you have to understand people in the different systems. Yeah. So what that means is, in the case of, for example, artificial intelligence or digital health, you have to understand some aspects of computer science and data and analytics and that world. You have to understand social determinants of health and public policy. You have to understand how drugs get paid for. And you have to have diverse elements helping you solve the problem. So the diversity comes from diverse thinking, but diversity means more than just DEI, which of course has been trashed. But what I mean by that is you need diverse professionals, nurses, pharmacists, dentists, public health, medicine, graduate students, etc. You need diverse functional elements, sales, marketing, software, engineering, supply chain, etc. But and you need diverse demographics. I mean, you need different people that look different. They come with a different story. But more importantly, you need cognitive diversity, people who think differently. Otherwise, it's just groupthink and you're not solving anything. So that's why you have to have this diverse ecosystem. and why you cannot fix sick care from inside. In fact, there are no industries that can be fixed from inside.
Absolutely. That's my tagline for my podcast is a diversity in thinking aloud. That is the key that you hit on the nail on the perfectly well described. American healthcare system is a paradox, Dr. Myers. It is a cost going up, quality going down. Just before we talk about your solutions, let us talk about where is that, United Healthcare CEO was shot. People celebrated, and unfortunately, that how much they fed up. It shows that how much the public fed up with the healthcare
Right.
system. So what do you think where it went wrong? United Healthcare CEO said that if anybody with the right mind would not design this kind of a system, he's
Right.
telling he himself is one of the others.
Right.
But tell us a little bit about that. What do you think where we can shake up the system? You think it is totally flawed in that sense?
Well, first of all, a healthcare system of a country, in my view, is a reflection, again, of its history and its values. So you could look at any healthcare system in the world, and it's a reflection of, again, their values. Now, if you look at the values of the United States, and this goes back to when the Dutch discovered New York in Wall Street in the 1600s, it's a capitalist society. It was started that way. That's why the Dutch went to New York. So a fundamental element of the US is capitalism. Now, you could fault it, good or bad, and the good news and the bad news and the inequality and the collateral damage and all that, but that's what it is. Secondly, obviously there are some other issues that have to do with slavery, with racism, and finally, a key element has to do with a fundamental distrust of centralized government. That's why we were created. So when you put those values together in a healthcare system, and essentially we wound up where we are because of the Second World War and how wage price controls limited what we could do. So therefore, that started health insurance, but the health insurance was started privately. Now, Medicaid and Medicare go back to the 60s, but when you put all these historical elements together, and we don't have time to go through the whole history, but it turns out that actually health policy reform is a over 100 years war. The first time that there was an attempt for the government to intervene in healthcare was over 100 years ago during the Progressive era and Teddy Roosevelt. So this is not new. This has been going on throughout our history. And that's why we wound up where we are now. Now, the problem is, let's just accept that capitalism, some may doubt me, but capitalism is not going away tomorrow. and we're talking $6 trillion at the trough. There are a lot of people that do not want that to go away.
Yes.
So we're feeding on a $6 trillion trough. It's a capitalist system. Now, the question is, how do we balance the ethos and the values of capitalism with the values and ethos of medicine, where the patient's interest is primary, quote, regardless of their ability to pay, which of course we all know is not true. So there are all these myths and there are all these elements that are in conflict. And I think the fundamental question is, how do we resolve the conflict between the values and purpose of business and the values and purpose of medicine? That's what we're attempting to do with the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs. I call this compassionate capitalism. I don't know any doctor who hasn't taken care of a patient for free. It's just what we do. But you can't continue to do it and still make a living and be a doctor. And this goes back since the beginning of medicine. The Greeks, the Romans, the buggy doctors and the black bag going and taking care of mom for a chicken. This has been around forever. It's the same thing. We're just dealing with a different element now.
Let us talk about Society of Physician Entrepreneurs. The reason I was asking about that, I tell you, it's much harder to teach IT technology professionals the medicine or any kind of related healthcare. They don't understand. They have misunderstandings a lot of times, and then that's a bigger challenge. Much easier to teach for physicians to do entrepreneurship, a little bit of a technology, a little bit of a mathematics and physics, because they went through medical school, one of the toughest ones. So I think you're on the right track. So why physicians are hesitant to jump into this physician entrepreneurship? They're scared, oh, somebody is a coding guy is going to be taking over. All the technology people taking over. Optimum is bought the United Healthcare. So why the physicians are not doing their job of jumping into the entrepreneurship, and what are the barriers there?
Right.
And then see their opportunities. We talk about opportunities next.
Well, part of it is because you've been told since you're 8 years old that you're the smartest person in the room. That's how you get into medical school. Of course, it's not true. So what that means is that there's a tendency to suffer from the Dunning-Kruger effect, which means you don't know what you don't know and you won't admit it. So you're a doctor, you know everything. Like, don't tell me what to do. I tell you how to do this, you do it. And if you don't, that's your problem.
Yeah.
So that's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
So in fact, when you are pre-med and you apply to medical school, the problem is the culture of medical education and how you become a doctor is one of competition and conformity. It's not you don't create, you don't make up stuff. You have to toe the line and conform to what we tell you to do. Now, that's the good news because you're dealing with patients and you don't want to get too far out of the guardrails.
Yeah.
But that's the culture that you get into when you get into medical school. It's highly competitive. Now, the problem is once you get there in medical school, that culture persists.
Yeah.
It's competitive. The only thing first and second year medical students care about is passing the test. And the only thing that third and fourth year residents or students care about is passing the test and getting the residency that they want. So everything that we teach them in their mind has to do with passing the test and getting the residency. Now, you can say, oh, I want to learn how to be a doctor. I want to learn all the skills. I want the bedside manner. The fact of the matter is, if it's not on the test, you forget the rest.
Yeah.
So this teaching to the test thing is a problem, particularly in the age of AI. The problem then becomes once you get out into practice and you start talking to people like you on these kinds of podcasts, we're talking about interprofessional collaboration. Entrepreneurship is a culture of collaboration and creativity. It's exactly the opposite of what I just described. So
Beautiful.
Now you have to shift your mindset. So you've been trained pre-med 4 years, medical school 4 years, residency 4 years. So for 12 years, you've been taught to think a certain way. Then when you get into practice, we want you to just supplement all that. We just don't worry about that stuff, because now we want you to collaborate. We want you to play nice with nurses. We want you to play nice with data scientists. We want you to get inside out. We don't want you to think you have all the answers. It's a fundamental cultural flaw and conflict, which we are trying to bridge, and you are trying to bridge on this podcast.
Very good. That is a cultural barriers. That is a tradition of learning different way. You as a doctor to learn something. I found a way to tell a story. That's the best way to give them. Otherwise, I know everything, as you said. I know everything. Attitude comes there. So that is a bigger problem, bigger barrier to pass through. So what do you do in our Society of Physician Entrepreneurs in your network? What once they join a member, what they go through?
Right. So what we do is, first of all, we're an international nonprofit, and we're an open network. So to the points we've been talking about, anybody can join. It doesn't make any difference whether you're a doctor, a surgeon, or a techie, or an entrepreneur, or a business school professor. our mission is to help members get their ideas to patients. So it's a big dating service, and essentially, it's a two-sided matchmaker market. And I tell people we're a cross between Rotary and Match.com. So basically, if you have a problem and you're trying to find somebody that can help you, you can do it in the network. And we're all over the world. So that's basically what we do. And when you join, it's a subscription model. It's a modest subscription fee of $80, and we give a break to medical students and residents because they're always complaining they can't afford it, which actually is not true, but we do it anyway. But once you join, then what we provide you is education. That is this whole business of entrepreneurship, and access to resources, networks, mentors, experience, peer support, and non-clinical career guidance. So we're walking you through this career supplemental transition. Some clinicians join us because they want to supplement their clinical career. Others are fed up. They want to quit medicine and they want to do something else. So that's basically what we do. We help them connect the dots.
Yeah, yeah, you know that I was reading I wanted to ask you about that. I'm from Silicon Valley. You did not mention a recent article that he wrote about nothing about AI. Everybody, now I tell you Microsoft AI, what he was telling. He said that doctors will be out of business, out of practice, because expert knowledge, AI will beat them. Right. Only people that requires is interacting with the actual physical interaction with the people, which is like nurses, they will have more demand. So if you wanted to train your next generation, make them technologists or make them nurses rather than doctors. How do you respond to that? It's a very scary kind of way of his putting together. He's a Microsoft chief of AI. He was telling that.
Well, again, this goes back to what we're teaching and how we're teaching the medical profession. In the age of AI, I've been saying that essentially doctors used to be, and for the most part still are, knowledge technicians, what I call knowledge technicians.
Yeah.
And that is rapidly being replaced with artificial intelligence and all the other stuff, so it's a good news, bad news story. The bad news is, as we're seeing, jobs are being replaced, particularly entry-level jobs, particularly in computer science, but more and more in some healthcare jobs. Not so much yet in actually physicians, but a whole bunch of other folks are getting laid off in terms of administration and operations and finance and all that. So those folks are getting canned. The good news is some are making the argument that artificial intelligence will actually make us more human. Now, the reasoning goes, if you use large language models to basically make yourself more productive, and that's a whole nother argument, because people argue all artificial intelligence has done is just create more work. It really hasn't made you more productive. You use a large language model, you rely on it to write something or produce something, you find out it's hallucinating, you got to go back and redo it, you have to reauthor it. And actually, I spoke to someone today who is a technical writer for a software company, and I asked her, do you use artificial intelligence to write your stuff? She said, no, it's a pain in the neck. If I use that, I just have to rewrite it. I have to keep editing. It's more work. It just makes, and it's called the Solow effect, which refers to Solow, who is a Nobel economist, who said that software does everything but make you more productive. I mean, just look at all the apps you have on your phone and you use 3 of them. So that's the bad news. The good news is that if you do this properly, and that's a whole nother issue, like how we regulate artificial intelligence, then if you use artificial intelligence to, in fact, make you more productive, then you have the opportunity to use that time to elevate your human cognitive, communicative, collaborative skills that are becoming more and more important, the so-called durable or soft skills, whether it's leadership, whether it's doing what you're doing, and doctors are seeing this. So this whole business about upskilling the workforce is about making the workforce more human and caring. It's called health care. So right now I don't know what it's a sick industry. It's really not caring. So that's the transition that we're trying to make from sick care to health caring.
Dr. Myers, I'm getting old. We are all getting old. America is getting old. We are all. So they need a lot of help, a lot of service. There is a demand for services. We are living longer. There is a lot of demand for services, where the AI can answer these questions, but where they can really depend on this. How do you solve this through entrepreneurship? This problem of the ever increasing demand of the healthcare services.
Well, my view on this is, everybody's talking about the physician shortage. That's true it's true now. Just try to get an appointment with a dermatologist or an orthopedic surgeon or a pediatric neurologist, and you're looking at 6 months. So
Yeah.
there is, but that shortage is large part dependent on geographic maldistribution. It's dependent on generalist specialist maldistribution because of the way we fund residencies.
Yeah.
And I would say that, and if you look at the present business model of sick care and you project that, yes, we will have a shortage, but you're looking at the future through the rearview mirror. My argument is you have to change the system. You can't keep doing it the same way.
Yeah.
I also would say that we should be more focused on reducing the supply of patients than the supply of doctors. In other words, everybody's getting, we're looking at the silver tsunami, all that other business, more and more chronic illness. You and I are getting older. Everybody's getting older. We got all this stuff happening. People need to learn how to take care of themselves. That's what the sick care problem is. So I call this the big fix. How do we transition from sick care to health care? And the problem is it's not their fault. I'm not saying that, patients just don't take care of themselves. That's true. They don't. But we're not giving them the tools and the knowledge to raise their medical IQ. In other words, understanding their illness and how to cope with it. And we're certainly not helping raising their insurance IQ.
Yeah.
So they wind up in all kinds of difficulties because they don't have insurance. They don't know how to deal with it. They don't know co-pays. They don't know deductibles. They don't know who pays for what. They don't know facility fees, all that stuff. So I think it's a two-sided coin. And I think it's a self-inflicted wound by the medical establishment and policymakers. We simply haven't done a good job of transitioning to a health caring system.
Yeah. I'm coming to the couple of last questions. I wanted to ask you about the cancer. It is one of these things is really we don't have solutions. People, JP Morgan conference, every year they come here, they make claims that we cured the cancer.
Right.
They make a big false statements, and then they get the money. I think I don't know. Actually, I love conferences around the JP Morgan conference. People like you that do a lot of conferences,
Right.
plug and play, and other. That's where I learned quite a bit, rather than the JP Morgan conference itself. Is that they are you want $100 million, you go there, they would let you come in. Otherwise, there is nothing.
Right.
So, what do you think? Where is this? How do you teach the real investors? Where does really the problem? How do you solve this problem? Where they need to put an investment rather than these big pitches by these big companies. Physician entrepreneurs need an investment also, not from big companies, but small companies, small angel investors, that kind of thing. How do you do that?
Well, the fact of the matter is that the mortality rates for many, many cancers have dropped significantly over the past several years. Some have not. In my particular specialty in head and neck cancer, we've had some slight increase in longevity, but fundamentally, the 5-year survival of head and neck cancer is about 50%, and it hasn't changed in 50 years. So there are certain targeted cancers that are just more difficult to deal with than others. Now, if you look at some others, there's been amazing. So, for example, immunotherapy and malignant melanoma. I mean, that used to be a death sentence for everybody. And now there's all these people getting, my friend had a scalp melanoma, got treated with immunotherapy, and he's up and kicking. So there's Jimmy Carter and his brain tumor, all that stuff. So there's been amazing advances in diagnosis and treatment of cancers that are reflected in longevity and increased survival. But, there's lots and lots of different cancers, and everybody's different. And if you look at genomics, if you look at, for example, optical biopsy, a liquid biopsy, for example, where you take a blood test for cancer, all different kinds of therapeutic modalities, imaging modalities, there's significant medical advances. So things are gradually improving. And if you say, well, how's artificial intelligence helping all this? I think it's helping in terms of drug discovery. Well, I know it's helping in drug discovery and development in terms of speed, cost, ultimate outcome, results, that kind of thing. The point that I would make, though, is that, you asked about artificial intelligence and where are we with that? And the example that I give is the iPhone was launched in June of 2007. So we're talking about 15 years, 16, whatever, 17 years. Could anyone have predicted the impact of the iPhone had they known then what we know now? No, if you lose your phone, you're screwed. So I think the same thing is going to happen. And there's this old saying that technologies are overestimated in the short run and underestimated in the long run. I think it's the same with artificial. We have no clue how this is going to play out, but how it plays out will in large part depend on how we regulate it. We could get a lot of bad news. It's like the atomic bomb. It's the next Oppenheimer effect. So if we don't do this right, we wind up with bad things happening. And I think in the long run, I'm pretty optimistic about how this is going to work. And my final point is that I'm very optimistic because I think this notion of physician entrepreneurship has gone mainstream.
Yeah.
I'm not taking credit for it. I think there's a lot of elements that go into that. I'm just a little piece of it. But I think more and more people are beginning to understand the value of innovation. And that is trickling down into medical school education reform, which I'm pretty involved with as well. So when I look at the big picture, I'm reasonably optimistic on how things are going to work out. And if somebody says to me, Arlen, my daughter wants to be a neurosurgeon, what do you think? I say, God bless her, but A, I need doctors because I'm getting older and I need somebody to take care of me. And B, you can't do it the old way. You have to come at this with a whole different mindset and skills.
Yeah. The decentralized intelligence, one of the concerns that I have with artificial intelligence is they want to put $10 billion the data centers and they want to control from there. That's kind of a concern to me because intelligence is supposed to be distributed. Entrepreneurship is the only way you can solve this problem as an entrepreneur. There is no other substitution for that entrepreneurship. You are doing a great job, Dr. Myers. They really, you not only should take a credit for the whole thing and that you started this innovations and entrepreneurship. You truly deserve the credit. And, welcome back to the January. You're coming to JP Morgan a little bit. Tell us about that event, when you're doing.
Well, so the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs has meetings all over the place. And last year we were at, I do some consulting work with some companies, so I was there with them. But we had a SoPE event for members. It was a nice dinner. It's strictly just a meet and greet, just up close and personal, and get to know each other. Because fundamentally, entrepreneurship is about just connecting the dots. It's just about meeting the right people, creating relationships, developing those kinds of partnerships. So we had a nice event, and then we're going to do the same thing this year. I think it's January 13th. But it's going to be somewhere in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, whatever. We have a pretty robust San Francisco chapter, and we're hoping to have a pretty well-recognized expert as a keynote speaker, which I can't reveal right now. But so it should be. So if you are a dues-paying member of SoPE and you're interested and you're going to go to JP Morgan, we're happy to invite you to this dinner. And it's a fun event. You get to meet a lot of really interesting people and just get up close and personal, which we all sorely missed in the age of Zoom.
Glad to publish the event on my network. Thank you so much, Dr. Myers. Thank you for joining. It's truly an honor and privilege. I learned so much from you. It is the way that you are from the traditional background to the entrepreneurship. You are the testament to that. You did a beautiful job in that kind of thing. Age is a number, but basically you took us the journey from traditional thinking to the most advanced entrepreneurship. Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining with us.
Thank you very much, and look forward to next time.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, absolutely. Good night.
Good night.
We are retelling their stories through our patented designs that can be worn on scrubs, t-shirts, printed on conference bags, and endless other promotional materials. Daily Wear for Medicine is the first ever of its kind to create curiosity in medicine through visual art. We at MedBricks are celebrating unsung heroes of the past who made enormous contributions to the field of medicine through our unique campaign called Daily Wear for Medicine. You can wear it, carry it, and give it.